Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅkhang Namami. So we'll begin this morning with a short guided meditation. Please find a comfortable posture. Try to keep your back straight. Relax your muscles, your limbs. Close your eyes. And bring attention to the feeling of the in-breath and the out-breath at the tip of your nostrils. If you practice anapanasati, breathing meditation regularly, then every time you come back to that sensation of the breath and you direct your mind's attention to it, it's like coming back to an old friend. And the breath has never harmed anybody. The breath is just a natural process. The air element entering the body through the nose, filling the lungs, allowing oxygen to go into the bloodstream, keeping all the cells in your body alive, healthy, flowing around the bloodstream, feeding all the organs and the muscles. So our breath is literally life. We all love life. We want to live. So when we put our attention on the breath, we're putting our attention on something that is vital to all of us, something that's important, valuable. But it's impersonal. The breath is not a person. It's not a being. It's not a self. The breath is a process, a natural process by which beings stay alive. As you keep returning your attention to the sensation of the breath, air coming in, the air going out. It helps the mind to calm down, and often quite quickly. Because when mindfulness is not present, we tend to get lost in our thoughts, moods, feelings, lost in a fantasy world. But using the breath like a good friend to establish mindfulness and re-establish mindfulness, we're getting back in touch with ourselves. And we don't have to judge the breath. It's not that it's good or bad. Even if we have health issues and can't breathe conveniently, you might have cold or flu, or you may have something more serious. But the breath itself is neutral. We don't have to form an opinion about it. The breath is just what it is. So as we're following the feeling of the breath going in and out at the tip of our nostrils, we can allow the mind that is constantly judging, planning, creating views and opinions and moods to settle down. We can allow all of that to settle. The mental agitation can settle. We can let go of everything other than the awareness of the breath itself. So we're taking a short internal holiday, break from the incessant chatter of the mind, all the thoughts and feelings. They still arise and pass away in consciousness, but we don't have to take any notice of them. We can let them go. And it's restful, peaceful, and brings the mind to a higher state of clarity. Many people find that when they try to meditate on the breath, all their thoughts seem to come up more than before, to disturb them, agitate them, annoy them, distract them. So we have to be very patient with that perception that somehow we're thinking more than before, things are bothering us more than before. And trust in the practice of bringing mindfulness to the breath. And little by little, we're letting go of all those distractions by placing our attention and our trust in the breath. So the breath is like a friend. Doesn't harm anybody, doesn't cause any problems. Just is the breath. Just like when you're, say, on a train or in a crowded place, there may be many conversations going on around you, but you don't take any notice of them because they're not your business. All you need to do is follow your breath. That's your business at this time. So whatever thoughts come up into your mind, you notice them and then let them go. Don't dwell on things. Don't hold on. Practice letting go by returning to the breath. We don't have to control the breath, make it long or short. At this time, just allow it to proceed at its own pace. And try to find happiness in just being with the breath more and more. And with all the mental chatter, less and less. If you can do this, then you have a source of happiness wherever you go in your life. Day or night, any place, any time. You can always turn back to your breath to calm the mind, bring up clarity. And from that, we'll gain more wisdom and understanding of life and how to free ourselves from stress and suffering.
Morning, Long Paul, everyone in the session. We will now formally request for the Dhamma talk. Brahma Jaloka Tibati Sahampati Katanjaliyan Iwarang ayachata Santi tasata araja kacatika ese tutama anukam pimang pacang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good morning to you all, fellow practitioners in the Dhamma. One of the benefits of sitting meditation before a Dhamma talk is it helps your mind to settle, to clear. They say it's like washing a piece of cloth before you dye it. If you have a piece of cloth you want to dye a different color, if you don't wash it, then the dye tends to come out all blotchy and you don't get such a successful job done. So meditation, any form of meditation should help to your mind to settle down, and then you're more open to the Dhamma. And the Dhamma is the truth, and probably like myself, you're interested in the Dhamma, in the Buddha and his teachings because you're interested in truth. Because truth is liberating. The opposite of truth is delusion, ignorance, misunderstanding of the way things are. And that's where our suffering and our problems arise in life. So the truth is, really, it's the most valuable thing we have, and we can aspire to as human beings, is to find the truth, understand the truth. especially in this day and age, people are put off religion and even Buddhism because they find there's lots of bits that they don't understand. So like when groups of Buddhists come together, there's often some ritual, chanting, bowing, some ceremonies take place. And that part is very similar to any other religion. And as we know, often religions in history and in this day and age can be associated with suffering, conflict, disputes and problems in the world. So as soon as people come in contact even with Buddhism, they sometimes say, oh, I don't want all that. I don't want all the paraphernalia, don't want the rituals, the administration even. You know, a group of people, a religious group of people requires some administration, logistics, all kinds of things. And this can be off-putting to people. They say, oh, I've got enough of that in my life already. Administration, rules, regulations, do's and don'ts. It's quite a natural reaction, but sometimes it's important to come back to the basic truths and the basic point of what the Buddha was teaching and what he was teaching, which is the Dhamma. And to remind ourselves that the Buddha himself left the lay life, the family life, all the kind of baggage that comes with living in the world, to go and live very simply in the forest. It's not that he turned his back on all of that or looked down on it. He simply recognized that to bring our mind to understand the truth, sometimes we do need to simplify things, set some of the baggage and the burdens of living in the world to one side, just put it down, so that one can point the mind more directly to the truth. And that's like what we just did in meditation. You sit down to meditate for a while. It's not that you've suddenly given up your family, your life, your job, being a citizen of your country and all the responsibilities, duties and things that come with that. You still have them in the background, but we also need to be able to put things down. And meditation is giving us a direct experience of putting things down. And how do we carry things? Well, we carry everything in our mind through memory, views, opinions, thoughts. This is the way we cling to the world, and this is where we often become further away from the truth because we get caught up in all that mental baggage. So most people find it very, very helpful to do a regular meditation practice. And it kind of makes these Buddhist teachings come alive. The truth comes alive because you're actually witnessing and observing the truth in yourself, in your own body and mind when you practice meditation. And the Buddha pointed out the Dhamma, or the truth, and the qualities of the Dhamma is that it's apparent here and now. So it's not something that you have to go far away to find, or to some mysterious place, or seek out some mysterious person to get your transmission. The nature of truth is that it's apparent here and now. It's always there. But because of our mental baggage and our clingings and attachments, we miss it much of the time. And that's why we get stressed and suffer in life. So sometimes it's worthwhile to remind yourself of the qualities of the Dhamma. It's apparent here and now, which often makes it sound too easy, doesn't it? Oh, the truth that brings people to full enlightenment, ends all their suffering, is apparent here and now. It's right here and right now. But it's the truth. And we forget that because most of the time our mind is not apparent here and now. Our mind is somewhere else in its own little world, the world of fantasy, ideas, moods, opinions, and so on. But the Dhamma is apparent here and now. It's timeless, it's akaliko. So it's not something that was only accessible to people back in the time of the Buddha. That's one of our opinions, isn't it? Oh, in the time of the Buddha, it was so easy. Go and listen to a Dhamma talk, get enlightened. And it was all good for them, easy for them. There were no distractions, no coronavirus, no restrictions, no problems with the economy. Didn't have to get a university degree. Just go and listen to the Buddha and get enlightened there and then. But the Dhamma is timeless. Of course, in the time of the Buddha, they had their own suffering, their own problems. The diseases had a different name, but they were still diseases. There were still the problems of earning a living, making money, learning to live together without hurting each other. All the same problems that we face, they faced. So the Dhamma is akaliko, it's timeless. It's not something just for the time of the Buddha. It's for this day and age and any day and age. It's never out of date. That's a big thing in the world, is we're really caught up in fashion, what's fashionable, what's new, exciting, stimulating, the latest thing, the best model. The Dhamma has all of that. So it's really the best thing the world has, because it's never out of date. It never goes out of fashion, because it's timeless. It's always relevant. It's always here with us if we put our minds to it. And it's what we call ehipasiko. It's encouraging investigation, meaning the Dhamma invites us to come and see, because that's the nature of the truth. The truth doesn't belong to anyone. It isn't owned by anyone. It's not like there's some person, sort of miserable person in the corner of the forest with their Dhamma. They got the Dhamma in their hands and they're not going to let you see it. They're looking at it themselves, but they're not letting you see it. It's not the way the Dhamma is. The Dhamma is the truth. It's encouraging investigation. It puts everything back onto us. It's whether we are interested to find out the truth and learn from it and gain from it and ultimately be liberated from it, from understanding it. And that's something that you can see even in this modern age, day and age, whether or in the time of the Buddha, the same. Like people who, whether it was the Buddha himself or people following in the footsteps of the Buddha, practicing according to his teachings, they're interested in the truth, and that very pure, wholesome aspiration is what leads them on, leads them to practice, leads them to go through any difficulties, obstacles, train themselves, practice with themselves, and also sooner or later to share. The Buddha pointed out the greatest gift is the gift of Dhamma. Nothing better that you can give to your children than Dhamma. Nothing better you can give to your friend than the Dhamma. Nothing better you can give to another person in the world who may be a stranger but needs some help in one way. The best is the Dhamma. Of course, how one gives the Dhamma and what kind of Dhamma is needed will vary in situations and time and place and so on. But the best gift we have is the Dhamma. So people who have practiced the Dhamma with that aspiration for the truth, realize the Dhamma and then share it. This is something very special, and it's still taking place today. And sometimes people go to Buddhist countries where the majority of the population are Buddhist, and they do see events, religious events, and they often at first are a little off-put, maybe just because they don't know the language and they don't know what's going on. They say, oh, look at all these people praying together or chanting together or doing some ceremony together, and it kind of looks a bit weird or mysterious or even off-putting. But really one has to investigate the Dhamma and come back to that original point. Oh, maybe they're all doing it because they're all interested in this one point and they want to understand the truth. And it just so happens that there's a large group of people wanting the truth. Ajahn Chah's monastery, even though he died, how long ago, 26, 27 years ago, 28 years ago, he, every year people go there, particularly in January. Maybe some of you have attended or seen pictures of it. They attend a meditation retreat for about a week. thousands of people, thousands of monks and nuns go to that event every year. There's hundreds of food stalls to provide food. There's all kinds of volunteers to clean up the rubbish and make sure the place is clean and tidy, and there's water and there's facilities. And then all the people who participate. And they're all interested to practice the Buddhist teachings for truth. Some people, maybe because of our background, we tend to interpret everything more in a sort of worldly, materialistic way. So you think, oh, what's in it for them? They've all come here to this place to meditate, put up with some of the difficulties of staying in the forest. It can be cold at night, windy, just eat one meal a day, camping in the forest. There's bugs, there's snakes. What's in it for them? Are they getting paid for this, or do they get something that they can put on their CV or their job application? Or are they making connections so that they can do business deals in the future? But it's not like that, is it? You go for the Dhamma, whether it's just coming to listen to the Dhamma on a Sunday morning like this, or you go on a retreat, or you become a Buddhist monk or a nun. It's not a commercial thing. It's not just to further your CV. I mean, you could have that attitude, but majority of people are not doing it in that way. They're interested to learn the truth. And that's the drawing power of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is like a magnet because it's the truth, and the truth is like a magnet. And why we have so much faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and teachers like Ajahn Chah and many other good teachers is they're like a magnet drawing us there through our own aspiration for the truth. Nobody forces us, nobody pays us, nobody compels us to do it, but it's the power of the truth and the interest in truth that draws people into that practice. And that's the same this morning. You're sitting. Why are you sitting cross-legged, watching your breath or listening to a Dhamma talk? You have that aspiration for truth because you've already had some sense that the truth is what liberates your mind from suffering, from delusion, which is the cause of suffering. I remember Ajahn Chah's funeral back in 1993. Approximately 1 million people attended that funeral. And there were journalists and reporters, even TV crews from around the world attended that, as well as from all over Thailand. And there's always, some people have the view, why are people here? Are they here because they can sell things, or are they here to get something more material out of the whole event? But of course, that wasn't the case at all. It was out of pure devotion, gratitude, appreciation, and also that quest for Dhamma that brought people to his funeral in such large numbers, and from every level of society, from the king, the prime minister, down to the ordinary villagers who lived near the monastery. Every level of society was represented at that funeral, and they're all there because they wanted to be there, gave up their time. Many people did a lot of good things. They cooked food and gave it away 24 hours a day to strangers. As long as there were supplies, people would be cooking and providing water and drinks and food, and people would be arranging that whole event all out of the goodness of their heart because of their love of Dhamma. And you could say someone like Ajahn Chah, a good disciple of the Buddha, was somebody who, like a magnet, drew people to him. And this is the nature of the Dhamma. It's subtle, it's refined, it's excellent, it's good, but it has this power to draw people's hearts because they want the Dhamma, and the Dhamma can arise in the human heart. Wherever there's a human heart, the Dhamma can be there. But we have to aspire to that and have to do the searching and the practice. So these are the qualities of the Dhamma that lead us on in the practice. And to get in touch with the Dhamma, it helps to practice meditation, to learn to turn our attention inwards, to develop this sense of introspection as much as going out as well. We can also learn the Dhamma from going out into society, observing the world, interacting with the world, of course. But unless we can really understand our own hearts and minds and see the Dhamma in them, it's more difficult to learn the Dhamma from the world. You know, they have that saying, the Arahant, the one who has brought their mind to really understand the Dhamma, be in line with the Dhamma, think like the Dhamma, act like the Dhamma, whatever the Arahant, the enlightened one, gets involved with becomes Dhamma. Whatever conversation they have becomes a Dhamma conversation, even if it's about something very ordinary, right? You know, what time is it? Or, you know, where are you going? Or some kind of ordinary question that an Arahant may ask their student or someone they know can become the Dhamma, because it's coming from the mind of somebody who has penetrated the truth, and particularly we say the Four Noble Truths. They've understood suffering, its origin, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the Four Noble Truths. The enlightened one has fully penetrated them, so everything they say and do becomes Dhamma. And in the same way, they say somebody who's unenlightened, hasn't heard the Dhamma of the Noble Ones, hasn't practiced it, doesn't know anything about it, even when they hear the Dhamma, they tend to turn it into the world again. They turn it back to the world, turn it back to the mental defilements, greed, anger, and delusion, which is why some people don't understand the Dhamma and criticize it, criticize people who practice the Dhamma, they misrepresent the Dhamma, and so on. That's possible as well. But the enlightened one turns everything into Dhamma, makes everything beautiful, even in the midst of difficulties and the suffering of the world. So an Arahant gets ill, they may have pain, physical discomfort, they may even, you know, groan because they got a painful something or other in their body, but their mind is not making that into suffering. Their mind is at peace, even with pain and discomfort, even with the thought of death. They don't create any suffering out of that. So everything the Arahant does becomes beautiful. And that is, as I said, it's like a magnet. The well-practiced one is like a magnet. They draw the good out of other people, the people around them. So that's why people like to go and visit good teachers. That's why they like to go and listen to the Dhamma in whatever way is possible. So now we don't, maybe can't physically go to see each other so much at the moment in lockdown, but at least through technology we can see each other, hear the Dhamma. And this magnetic effect to the Dhamma is continuing to this very day. In the time of the Buddha, one of the students of the Buddha, Mahakassapa, who actually was quite often considered to be like the father of the Sangha, a very special monk, enlightened monk in the time of the Buddha. Prior to being a monk, he'd been a farmer, and quite a wealthy farmer, well-to-do farmer, but he had grown weary of that. He didn't want to inherit his parents' land and wealth and take on the family business. He wanted to give that up as quickly as he could and become a monk. He hadn't met the Buddha yet, but he had that aspiration for truth. He was a Dhamma seeker. And he was married off, he had a wife, but his wife had a similar aspiration. They were equal in that sense. His wife had an aspiration for truth. She didn't want to get married and live happily ever after in the family home. Just like Mahakassapa, his wife wanted to become a nun, a Dhamma seeker, maybe go and live out in the forest, find a teacher. So they both left that home life, and being good Dhamma practitioners, they separated at the crossroads. When they had left home, they realized they couldn't travel together anymore. They'd come this far in their spiritual practice as a couple. Now they separated. So she went left, he went right. But they were both eventually came to meet with their teachers, with the Buddha, became monks and nuns, and became enlightened. And the important thing why I brought this up is because when Mahakassapa, who was still a layman but ready to practice, he already had shaven his head and put on some rag robes, was walking, he was looking for his teacher. He came across the Buddha sitting under a tree by the side of the road. Immediately there was that inner sense, oh, this is somebody special. They say he saw the rainbow aura around the Buddha, the enlightenment aura of a fully enlightened Buddha, that radiance of the rainbow colors, the peace, the atmosphere was very peaceful. The Buddha was just sitting quietly under a tree. Mahakassapa immediately had that sense of, oh, this is something special. This is what I'm looking for. So he went up, paid his respects to the Buddha, and became a student of the Buddha at that time, because he was looking for a teacher. And the Buddha gave him 3 kind of rules or guidelines that he would have to abide by if he was to become a student of the Buddha. And he said, yeah, I'll agree, whatever. And one of them was that the Buddha said you have to give respect to the Dhamma, to the truth. Whatever Dhamma that is leading to wholesome states of mind arising, that is conducive to the spiritual practice, you should respect that Dhamma. Try to remember it, respect it, value it, analyze it, understand it. So the Buddha was encouraging the proper way to deal with the Dhamma, or to approach the Dhamma, is not just to remember it, commit it to memory in the more worldly way of just learning information, but having committed it to memory, whatever Dhamma that is conducive to wholesome states of mind arising, one should investigate it, uphold it, practice it. The other request the Buddha made of Mahakassapa was, well, you're going to live as a student of mine, a monk. Well, there are other monks, you're not the first. We live as a community, so you have to learn to respect all the members of the community, respect the Vinaya, the rules of the community, respect the community members, whether they're young or old, junior, senior, to have respect and have humility, to have a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, but humility in the community, not to think that one is, just because one is older, that one is better, or one has more knowledge, or one got enlightened before someone else, that one is somehow better. Always to be shedding the conceit and the ego that may form even in a Buddhist monastic community. The last thing that the Buddha asked from him was that he establish himself in mindfulness of the body and enjoy it too. Sometimes people think of Mahakassapa as a very grim, kind of austere monk, because he kept the 2 Dongha practices, the very austere practices that some of the forest monks keep. Like he wore rag robes, ate in his bowl, went on alms round and often in very poor areas. And he kept a lot of very austere practices. From what we know of his character, he was quite gruff and quite direct, and probably some of the monks were a bit afraid of him. But the Buddha said you should be practicing mindfulness directed to the body every day and enjoy it, which is an important point, because when you practice the Dhamma and bring your mind to see the Dhamma, even Dhamma that on the surface may seem quite difficult to accept, say like the truth of impermanence, we're all subject to aging, sickness and death. We should enjoy the Dhamma. And so, at first you might think, how can you enjoy the thought of aging, sickness and death, or the fact that the human body is not as attractive as we think it is? Because Venerable Mahakassapa would contemplate the unattractiveness of the body every day. How can you enjoy that? Well, the enjoyment comes is the effect of the truth on the mind, is when you see the truth, your mind opens up, it becomes brighter, clearer. Like recently in Melbourne, we've had cloudy skies, dark skies, a lot of stormy weather. It's like the storm passes, the sky opens up, you can see the moon at night, you can see the sun in the day. It's like the mind opening to the Dhamma. It's enjoyable and it's uplifting, even when you recognize something that before you might be afraid of. Often we're afraid of the truth, aren't we, when we first look at it. I remember when I was young, some of my relatives, you talk about the thought of death. You say, oh, what happens when old so-and-so is going to die? They say, don't talk about that. People don't want to talk about death or impermanence or old age. Or you say, well, what are you going to do when you get old? No, don't talk about that. I don't want to hear about that. often we're afraid of the truth. We don't like it, or you may have some possible illness and you don't want to go to the doctor because you don't want to hear the truth. Oh, you've got cancer. Oh, you've got this, diabetes, blood pressure problems. Often we're afraid of the truth. We take the short-term comfort of our ignorance and shun the long-term benefit of hearing the truth. So sometimes we're even afraid of the truth. But when we are willing to face the truth, look at the truth, it's enjoyable. It brings happiness in the sense that it frees the mind from the darkness of delusion, wrong thinking, wrong views, misunderstandings, which only compound our suffering in life. So the Buddha's teachings are encouraging us, just as Mahakassapa heard, to investigate the truth and be willing to look at the truth and accept it when we see it and know it, which is not always easy. But the Buddha said, enjoy the truth, meaning we're learning to recognize that the truth has this sense of enjoyment with it. It's like, oh, yeah, this is true. And you feel good when you recognize the truth, whether it's in your own mind, say particularly during meditation or listening to Dhamma, or in a more mundane, ordinary situation where you just find out the truth of things. The truth puts your mind at rest, even when it's an unpleasant truth. You just know, oh, it's the way it is. So actually learning to enjoy the truth, inclining to the mind, to the Dhamma, and then enjoying the Dhamma is something to keep in mind as you practice the Dhamma. You find the enjoyment as you're meditating. There may be difficulties as you practice meditation. You may have pain in your leg, or you may have some unpleasant thinking, trains of thoughts come up, or unpleasant memories. You're still maybe processing various kinds of selfishness or anger or worry or fear in your mind, and you come to meditate. That may come up. But try and frame it in terms of Dhamma. Use the Dhamma to your advantage. So the Buddha gave us the framework, the Four Noble Truths. So as we practice meditation, find the enjoyment in understanding the Dhamma as you do it, even when things are going badly. We always have that phrase, oh, I had a bad meditation today. I was sitting there, my mind was all over the place, or I was full of anger because I was remembering something about my work or my family life, or I was full of greed. I was just missing all the things I want, all the pleasures in my life. I was just thinking about them. I wasn't meditating. We often judge ourselves in that way based on what we think about the experience of meditation, but try to frame it like the Buddha taught us to frame it. This is the Four Noble Truths in practice when we're meditating. So if you're experiencing some suffering, one way or another, try to establish that awareness. Oh, this is suffering. Already the mind is opening to the Dhamma in that way, because you're taking away that personal identification with the suffering of the mind, which we normally fall into. As soon as something goes wrong, we get angry and we identify with the anger. As soon as we have a desire for some pleasure, it's stimulated, we believe in that, we identify with that pleasure and that desire. As soon as something unpleasant happens, and maybe we have fear, we identify with the fear. And this is why we keep suffering in life. We don't have the mindfulness and the wisdom and the clarity to see what's going on. But if you are one who practices meditation regularly, listens to Dhamma regularly, tries to put these practices into your life, bring them into your life, then you can use that framework of the Four Noble Truths to deal with your experience, even in what we call a bad meditation. You say, oh, what monks sometimes do is they say, the teacher asks, how was your meditation? You say, oh, my mind was all over the place, full of anger, full of greed, full of worry. The teacher says, oh, that's good. You got a lot of Dhamma today. If you turn your experience into the Four Noble Truths, you gain something. You don't gain anything material. You don't gain the praise of others or anything. But you gain the Dhamma. You gain truth, which is something that liberates the mind. It brings you some peace. It becomes enjoyable, even when you have a bad meditation. Oh, I got a lot of Dhamma today. And you can say that to your friend, and like it does now, it makes you chuckle, doesn't it? When you sit there thinking about how miserable you were during your meditation, But when you finally establish clarity, your mind wakes up to what's going on, sees it in terms of Dhamma, the Four Noble Truths, then you can look at it with a smile and say, oh, I got a lot of Dhamma today. Sometimes we say that like monks, sometimes even monks, you might have the thought, oh, monks live in the forest and they're just living with nature. It's all good, all easy. They have no real problems. They're not living in the real world. But it's not true at all, is it? Monks live in the world just like anyone else, and they have to learn to live with other people. They have to learn to live with their own body, live with their mind, interact with society. So sometimes monks become, the butt of people's jokes, or the butt of their aggression, or their conceit, arrogance, just as much as anyone else does. But the advantage of being a monk is you're surrounded by fellow practitioners. So you're learning to always translate things in terms of Dhamma. So somebody comes to the monastery and, lets off steam and say, oh, I think all Buddhist monks are lazy. Once in a while that happens. They're just lazy. They're just freeloaders trying to get a free meal for doing nothing. After they've gone, after everything's quietened down, then the monks always say, oh, today was a good day. We got a lot of Dhamma today. And that in itself can make you enjoy even an unpleasant experience sometimes by turning it into Dhamma. I remember the first year we lived in Australia, we hadn't built the monastery yet. We were just staying in a rented cabin. Nobody knew us. And we're in a totally new community. And some of the villagers in the little hamlet that we lived in, they were a bit suspicious of seeing two monks living in a rented cabin. What are they up to? There's one lady who was obviously a very staunch Christian. She saw us going on alms round every day. And the first time she saw us walking past, she just shouted something at us. She just said, oh, you guys, you think you're so smart. You're going to walk and you're just going to get free food. You think you're so smart not having to work for a living. These monks are just lazy. They stay in their house all day and then come out and get their free food. We understood where that's coming from because we've all been brought up in non-Buddhist societies, and maybe even we've thought that thought before, who knows. But the monks, we just kept mindful, patient, practiced mindfulness and contemplated the Dhamma. And my contemplation was, oh, this is probably my karma. Particularly when I was a teenager, I probably said quite a few things that I shouldn't have, rude to people, said something that wasn't quite nice to somebody. This is it coming back to me. So, okay, a bit of Dhamma finished there. One less debt I owe to the world. Other monks would just do their meditation, just see the arising and the ceasing of these unpleasant words, and we carry on. But we carried on meditating and practicing and going on alms round every day. Had no choice, because in the early days there wasn't much food or support. So this woman kept seeing us every day, and every time she said some negative comment, we go back and say, someone would ask, what did you get on alms round today? And we say, we got a lot of Dhamma on the alms round today. This woman, she criticized us, she said this, she said that. But the happy ending to this story was not only were the monks getting some good training, not getting spoiled, they were being kept on their toes, having to practice patience, loving kindness, and so on. But also this woman was impressed. We didn't answer her back. We didn't bother her. We didn't ask her for anything. We didn't complain when she criticized us. And other people in the street, seeing us every day, started to put food in our bowl, and they said they quite liked seeing the monks. They liked seeing peaceful people going about their business, reminding them of the spiritual side of life, reminding them of meditation. So after a few months of going Bindabata, one day the lady who had been criticizing us many times came out with a bowl full of fruit and started putting it into our bowls. And after that, she never criticized us again. So a happy ending in that story. But the Dhamma is like that. If you keep inclining your mind to the Dhamma, reflecting on your experience as Dhamma rather than just my problem, my experience, your problem, and seeing everything in terms of self and people, well, it liberates your mind. It makes life much more enjoyable. So there may still be difficulties you face, but if you reflect on what's going on in your mind, it's just a negative train of thought coming up. I'll have to put up with that, practice mindfulness, not give in to it. I must practice letting it go. You turn something unpleasant into something pleasant. And this is what all those enlightened monks and nuns, the Buddha and his disciples right up to the present day have done. They've turned the ordinary things of the world into something beautiful by turning it into the Dhamma, developing mindfulness, developing insight, raising their mind to a higher level. So I think time is up. Maybe I'll leave the talk there this morning, but I'll just encourage you all to keep practicing, be patient with the difficulties, just turn it all into the Dhamma, keep your mind with the Dhamma, and you'll find this is what brings you true peace, true happiness.
Annamayang Dhammakataya Satu Karang Tatamase Sa